course, we ask the active role of our national security apparatus right now. A lot of critics have responded to what they have been seeing in the last 4 days. David Afrika, Executive Director of the African Center for Security and Intelligence Praxis, joins us now to unpack this for us. David, good evening, and thank you very much for your time. As we are watching the situation in Mhlanga, we are watching the situation now outside Maponya Mall in Soweto. We've seen it in Enedale. We've seen it elsewhere in South Africa. Questions are being asked around the effectiveness of our national security apparatus. Do we have a strategy that matches the unfolding situation?
Hi, good evening to you and the viewers. I think it goes without saying, if we see what's happening, that we don't have the capability at the moment to confront the kind of threat that we've seen unfolding over the last week. I would say that probably we have some of the key elements of a strategy. If you think back to quite recently, the Minister of State Security's budget speech, where there are some elements of a strategy and ideas about the process of how to develop that strategy further, then I think there are serious conversations in that respect that's been started by the minister. But the problem here is that you cannot rush the development of the strategy because there's a crisis confronting us now. I mean, the strategy in itself is a way of dealing with these sorts of crises that will be recurring quite frequently, because it involves engaging the citizenry in the development of that strategy, in the development of our national security policy and so on, so that it's people-centered. So I think there are some ideas that the minister, at least in her most recent budget speech, has outlined. And so the question is, how do we involve the society in that conversation? Because you can't develop this strategy independent of the citizens.
David, it seems the citizens are not waiting for us to talk about how do we incorporate them. The people are seemingly now becoming the center of the response. Not something that we want to promote and something that we want to see, but it seems in the absence of a cohesive and a comprehensive solution, people are becoming that solution right now.
Well, I don't want to assume that what we are seeing at the moment is a representation of the people in its totality or as a majority of the people. Obviously, there's a significant, portion of the population that's unhappy at a number of things. These are sort of complex and interrelated factors that's leading to the current crisis. But to suggest that the people are speaking in the forms in which some people are speaking now, that is to say through the use of violence and looting and so on, I think would be a mischaracterization. So obviously it would have been better if we had a strategy in place before last week, so that one could have, because on the basis of the strategy, obviously one would develop certain capabilities that ideally would prevent more of these kinds of events.
Yeah.
But as a matter of reality, what we have to realize, it's not just with security intelligence. I mean, you can go to job creation. We've failed to build an economy. You cannot say now that under the current administration, suddenly you have to create millions of jobs. We are critical, because we feel that not enough is being done. But in a number of areas, in fact, in most areas of governance, ministries and departments have not delivered. And this is a long-standing problem. It is our failure, the failure of the state to deliver on its promises to the society. But you cannot isolate national security and intelligence in particular and say, since there is a crisis, which is not of the making of intelligence, it is a culmination of a broader societal dynamic. You cannot blame intelligence for the crisis. Obviously, we always wish that they would have done better than quite clearly they have. But intelligence is not a thing. Remember that our intelligence capability has been denuded. It has been decapitated over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
It is not something. Intelligence is not something that you can just switch on and off.
There's a new
minister. Please switch it back on.
Would you say it is also limping purely because of the fact that part of the dynamic here, because it's not one single factor that is at play, but the other factor that is at play here is this: these are political actors. This is as a result of political action and political warfare, if you like.
Yeah, it's obviously, the challenge that is confronting us here, the current crisis is fundamentally political. It has to do with political conflict within the ruling party, and I think here, from a national security perspective, one has to look at it as a cautionary tale. People go around glibly talking about the ANC must break up and so on. This is a small sample of what the breakup of the ANC is going to look like. So this is fundamentally a political crisis. It goes to issues of the legitimacy of the state, the social contract, the cohesion of the society, the cohesion of the ANC. And so you find that intelligence is having to deal with problems that are fundamentally of the making of political actors, political factions and so on. And it makes the work of intelligence more complex, because it is unfortunate that these political dynamics are playing out inside the ruling party and the state itself. So it does obviously complicate, the task of intelligence.
Now, in light of the diminished trust between the residents, the citizens, and the leadership at this particular point, how do we come up with that hybrid model of national security that incorporates the people?
Yes. So, I think in the first instance, broadly speaking, the ANC as a sort of, the party that has historically represented the interests of the broadest section of the society, should have a serious introspection, because I think this crisis has alerted us to the potential damage that this infighting can cause. But from the perspective of the state, let's take just now national security. I think what the minister has to do is to take her ideas, which is really firmly set on transforming and professionalizing, developing the professional capability of the intelligence services, to take it to the people, to engage communities, not just professionals, but to go out to communities and to talk to people about what is the kind of security they envisage. How do they see themselves creating that security? Because it's not just a function of the executive to create a secure society. So there has to be an interaction. You have to, because part of why people act like this is because they feel alienated from the decision-making process. So go to the people, engage them in this process, and I mean, there are interesting ideas that's expressed in the budget speech. Right. They should be explored and taken to the people.
David Afrika, Executive Director of the Africa Center for Security and Intelligence Praxis.